for vaginal dryness. If you have urinary incontinence, predisposition to urinary tract infections, then localized estradiol is pretty good for that. But I often don't think it's enough to have all the other benefits like the well-being, the belly fat, the skin tightening, hot flashes, night sweats, mood, all of that good stuff.
Yeah. I assume the levels that you achieve in your blood, the serum levels, would be significantly lower on a vaginal ring versus a systemic transdermal or oral treatment.
Right, exactly.
So, here's assuming that's checked off on that one, here's a related question that you can probably see on the Q&A. The person's asking, what does bioidentical actually mean? And how are bioidentical hormones different from synthetic hormones in terms of chemical makeup, FDA approval, manufacturing, etc.?
Yeah, it's such a good question because I think there's so much misconception about what bioidentical means. And I do think there's this perception that it's some kind of voodoo or so that's not FDA approved, that it's always has to be compounded. So that's not true. Much of the bioidentical hormone therapy we use is FDA approved. You can get it at retail pharmacies. All bioidentical means is that it's molecularly identical to what our own innate hormones are. And that's why we prefer them over synthetic, which may not be exact, an exact match to what we make. So sometimes what happens with the synthetic, especially progesterone, the one they used to use kind of up until the 90s, that progesterone was just different enough to cause a lot of problems because it was attaching to the wrong receptors and increasing women's risks for breast cancer. Whereas the bioidentical, the micronized progesterone, is molecularly identical to what we make, so attaches to the right receptors and seems to have almost a protective effect in terms of breast cancer risk. So that's why we choose bioidentical therapy over synthetic. And manufacturing can differ. There are different manufacturers for estradiol or thyroid armor therapy. But much of it is FDA approved. There's a few things that we compound, there's a few things that we compound, but even those go under pretty strict regulation. It may not be the FDA, but they have their own regulatory bodies.
I was just going to say, I feel like trying to lump bioidentical into a manufacturing issue is sort of misguided. For all the reasons you're saying, it's less about where it's made. They're actually, they're all made in pharmaceutical plants, really. But it's really just the molecular structure, as you implied, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So any other questions today, anyone?
By the way, both of those questions I kind of addressed in the webinar that I did 2 weeks ago. So I think that's available as well for our members if anybody wants to watch that.
Yeah, those are recorded on the member portal. So if you don't have access to the portal, you could ask the receptionist in clinic. She could help, or our customer support team. But anyways, those are all recorded on the member portal. So, oh shoot, the person who posed our question has just come on.
Oh, really? Welcome.
I might just say the other folks who are on the call, if you want to drop off, I would like to individually address that with the person who just arrived, because that's the one she asked, and I think it was actually a great question. So if that's okay, Dr. Tandon, you want to just go through with that person? Actually, there's one other person who's now just come on too.
Yeah.
The question was about the fem ring, vaginal ring, loss of symptoms or no symptoms except the things she mentioned, and what would a transition to BHRT look like?
Yeah. So what we had talked about was that the one you're taking, the fem ring, is more of a localized estradiol, and typically it's used for vaginal dryness. If you had any urinary incontinence or predisposition to urinary tract infections, that's a great option. The things that you mentioned in terms of loss of libido, muscle strength, that the main hormone that would improve those symptoms would be testosterone. And Testosterone helps with lean muscle mass. It helps with stamina, endurance, restores your libido, makes intimacy more enjoyable, all of that good stuff. And testosterone typically is our preferred choices are a cream or what's called a pellet insertion, which is every 3 months you would come in and we put in a small testosterone pellet, which is like the size of a cooked grain of rice. And it just goes in the butt cheek and it gives you a daily release of hormone for 3 months. But what we also talked about was there's, symptomatic relief, which you would get with the testosterone and maintaining the localized estradiol. But there is also the benefit that you get with using systemic estradiol. Also, it could be as an insertion or a patch or a pill, because that also helps reduce your risk of heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis. And you don't get those benefits with a localized estradiol the way you do with the systemic version. And the other hormone is progesterone, which is super important to maintain a good mood, maintains kind of this even keel feeling, happiness, also restores sleep. So you sleep a little more easily and you stay asleep, restores your REM cycle so you feel fresh in the morning, sets you up for a good day. So those would be the other things we'd kind of get more of a history with you about and see if that would be also something we'd add on to the testosterone. And then we talked about whether localized estradiol gets you, if any of that goes into the bloodstream, a little bit does, but not to therapeutic enough levels where you would see all these other benefits. Did I answer that?
I'm going to add one comment because the close of the question that had been posed was, what would my transition to bioidentical hormone replacement therapy look like from using the FemRing alone? Step one would really be get a full panel of labs, specifically the hormone, what we call the pre-BHRT female hormone panel. And then we'd also need some other labs that you've probably had recently if you're on the weight loss program. So those wouldn't be required. But anyways, that would be step one. Have the lab panel done and you could talk to your clinician at Jumpstart about that. And then you'd schedule a consultation with Dr. Tandon or one of the other BHRT clinicians to talk about options for systemic treatment and transitioning likely away from the FemRing because you'd achieve everything that the FemRing achieves and more with systemic therapy. So there may, thought there was another question, but there's not. So unless any other questions, actually, let me see if there's anything happening on the chat.
Just say, take advantage now of the free BHRT labs promotion.
I took that slide off because I wasn't totally sure if it was still happening, but yeah.
I think it's ongoing for a few more weeks.
Oh, great.
Whereas if you schedule a consultation and sign up for that, we will waive the lab fee, which is about a $600 to $900 retail value. So it's a huge savings.
That's great.
Yeah.
So now's the time. All right. Well, that was really fun. So I hope that was useful to all of you. And if you have any other questions, speak now or forever hold your peace, or come back next Tuesday. And then the follow-up thought would be Dr. Tandon is doing another health webinar this Thursday. And I can't remember the subject of that webinar.
We're going to talk about how hormones help metabolism.
Oh, great. But anyways, that should be great fun and super informative. So enjoy that if so inclined. And remember, if you miss these, they are also available on the member portal. So you can always follow up with them at a more convenient time for you later on the portal. So that's all.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great week.
You too. Bye.